so I don't know. It's probably your end, so reset it. For question 23, if it only told you paid for amount, not value, where equity would be, wait a minute, 23. Buyers purchased their first home, so the value of their home is $250,000 by the purchase price. Their debt's $200,000, their equity's $50,000. That was very easy, by the way. I did chapter 16 already. I won't be penalized for leaving this class now, right? Nope. Number 18 was divided by 5%. Correct. I did that as well. Okay, no worries, guys. I'm going to moderate the conversation. We're going to move on to chapter 15, financing to primary and secondary mortgage markets. So at the end of this chapter, at the end of today, you should be able to describe various financing techniques. We're going to describe many different types of loans for different reasons. Again, guys, when we do these, forget about the whys, the who, and all that other good stuff and the what ifs. Just remember what the loan is and what it does. That's what you need to remember to pass a test. Not why do people get that kind of loan? What conditions would they? Don't worry about that. Just understand these are types of loans that we're going to be describing. You should be also able to identify the sources of real estate financing, primary markets. Where do you get mortgage money from? And explain government influence on mortgage lending. We're going to talk about the secondary mortgage markets and government influences in those as well. So, different types of financing techniques by the use of their program. In other words, different types of loans for different purposes. First loan that we're going to talk about is called a purchase money mortgage. Now, by strict definition, any money used to buy real estate is called a purchase money mortgage. I don't care if it's a fixed rate, adjustable rate, conventional, FHA, VA, if it's a farmer's home loan, I don't care. I don't care if the seller's financing the property himself. Whatever loan the borrower uses to purchase property is called a purchase money mortgage. Purchase money mortgage is what you go to apply for when you want to buy a house, and you take that money and buy a house. That money is called a purchase money mortgage. If a seller's financing and using his equity of the property as a financing tool, then that loan that you get with the owner is called a purchase money mortgage. Whatever loan you use, if it's for the purchase of real property, it's going to be called a purchase money mortgage. Now it says maybe first or second mortgage, correct. In other words, you could refinance your original purchase money mortgage. It's still going to be a purchase money mortgage, just refinanced. So there should be no questions on what a purchase money mortgage is. So moving on, reverse mortgage. Now, you may have seen, who is it? Tom Selleck, Magnum PI. He's on TV telling you about reverse annuity mortgages or reverse mortgages. What are they? Well, they're very interesting types of loans. First of all, this is not a loan for anybody and everybody. In order to qualify to get a reverse mortgage, you must be 65 and older and owning the home that you currently live in. You can have a small mortgage debt against it, but the house requires to have plenty of equity in it for a reverse mortgage to occur. Now, let me explain how this works. Let's say, and I've met these people, guys, I'm telling you, they're out there. I come across an elderly, I'll just give you an example. Doris. This is an elderly woman looking to sell her house because she doesn't have enough money to pay the bills. She has no mortgage on the house, but her finite payments from Social Security and a pension that her husband left her are barely enough to cover the taxes, let alone put food on the table. Her car's broken down. She can't fix it. No money. There's a hole in the roof. She can't fix it. No money. Little Jimmy, her grandson's birthday's coming up, and she wants to give him $5, but she has no money. She's in a tough spot. Now, because of that, and there's no mortgage debt on the property, she's cash poor, but she's house rich. Think about this. Her value of her property, let's say, is $300,000. Her debt is zero. She has no mortgage. That means her equity is $300,000 of value. So she's house rich. She has a lot of money tied up in her house. But she can't use her house to pay bills off unless she gets a reverse mortgage. Now, this is going to be different than a home equity loan. First of all, in a reverse mortgage, you have to be 65 and older, and you have to own the house you live in. For a home equity loan, you can be any age at all, so long as you have equity in the property. In a reverse mortgage, you don't get a lump sum payment like you do from a home equity loan. You get monthly installment payments from the bank. So it's based on the equity in the home. So she has $300,000 in equity. So the woman says, I need to do something. So I advise Doris, you should be talking to a bank instead of selling your house, unless you want to. Oh, I'd rather stay in my house, but I can't afford to. I put her in contact with a mortgage rep who explained how a reverse mortgage works. And what he said is this, dear, you have $300,000 of equity that you can tap into as a source of income on a monthly basis to help you pay bills. But how am I going to repay that? I don't have an income. Don't worry. Here's the thing. First of all, we're not going to advance you 100% equity. We're only going to advance you a portion. So when we send our appraisers out and they confirm the value is $300,000, we'll give you a reverse mortgage based on, let's say, 2/3 of value or $200,000. That way you still have $100,000 in equity in the property. So how would you like that? Would you like $1,000 a month? Would you like $2,000 a month? Well, I don't know if I need that much money, but $1,000 a month would be good. So 200,000 divided by 1,000 equals 200 months of income now generated. Divide by 12 monthly installments, that gives you what? 17 or so and a half or 18 years of payments? You're 65. That means you're going to be like 83 to 85 when those payments end. How do you feel about that? Oh, I don't know if I'll live that long. But what if you do? I guess how am I going to repay it then if I run out of money? Well, here's the beautiful part about a reverse mortgage, dear. You don't have to make any payments to the bank until you leave the property. What do you mean leave? Either you die or you sell the property and leave it. Either way, from the proceeds of the sale, you can pay off the debt, including the interest owed. So if it's $200,000, it's $200,000 plus an interest. That still gives you, remember, $100,000 of equity left from 20 years ago. Over the 20-year period, you may have built up another additional amount of equity in the property. So think about this. If you're an elderly person with no job, just a limited income, and the bills are mounting, you can't pay them, if you have a lot of equity in your property, you can qualify for reverse mortgage by taking out monthly installments against the value in your property. Using that money, she fixed her roof, fixed her car, gave little Jimmy $5 in his birthday card, then was able to go out to lunch with her girlfriends and enjoy a better quality of life because she tapped into the equity of her home through a reverse mortgage. So she doesn't pay any bills whatsoever during the course she lives in that house. She just takes the money out of the bank. Then when she either sells that house or dies, either her or her estate will either sell that house and pay off the debt, including the interest required, and whatever's left over is the inheritance to the heirs. Or if she sells the house, pays off her debts, takes the equity, and now goes maybe buys a small condo down in Florida and chills out down there. So a reverse mortgage, once again, is for a senior who owns the house they live in, has very little debt, and can tap into the equity based on a monthly draw against that equity and doesn't pay the debt back until they leave the house or sell it. Was there any questions about a purchase money mortgage or a reverse mortgage? What happens if the proceeds of the sale after her death is less than the reverse mortgage? Well, that's a bad part, right? If the market's tanking, the house isn't worth it, then her estate is going to have to pay back that bill, or she has to sell the property and pay the debt off. What if the market crashes? Again, that's the answer I just gave. Okay. Is there anybody else with a question? My internet kicked me out, so I missed purchase money mortgage. Okay, you can read up on it, Jason. No worries. Anybody else with a question? David? Michael? No? Yes? Would she be able to get a reverse mortgage if she had a vacation home but didn't live there? She couldn't get the mortgage from the vacation house, only the house remember, she has to own the house she lives in. I think I said that a couple times. What if the house is left in the will and the person who gets it doesn't want to sell? Well, in order to settle debts, they may have to, or they can pay the debt separately. It's up to them. Can you, I'm sorry, Shemsi, what? Is the monthly payment income? No. Oh, Kieran, you spelled your name correctly. I don't see that as a question, but anybody else with a question? And Shemsi, I don't understand your question. I meant, what if she didn't live in the shore house? Then she can't, remember, you have to live in the house that you own. I think he meant, can you disregard the, disregard the interest? What interest are you talking about? I'm not understanding what you're asking. So guys, if you're going to ask me a question, ask me a complete question. Again, not parts of a question. It's very hard for me to understand that. He meant, can you lock the interest? What interest? I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding. What interest? Can your senior make too much money on fixed income to qualify? Yes. So it cannot be an investment property or vacation home because they don't live there. Correct. Rachel is right. He meant you can lock the interest. Again, you mean on the loan that you're getting? Are you getting it? You can get a fixed rate loan and the interest is locked for the entire length of the loan. So I'm not understanding the question. I'm sorry. After it's paid out over whatever amount of time, say 17 years, is the reverse mortgage still charging interest, or is the interest a part of the payout? Or is the interest a part of the payouts? Trying to understand what you're asking. So if you're asking if she takes the 17 years and still stays in the house, does that mortgage still generate interest against it? The answer is yes, until it's paid back. Yes. I don't know about the rest of your question. And in any case, is it possible for the lender to take ownership of property? Is it the lender? If they default, they may foreclose on the property. Is there interest on reverse mortgage? Yes. Can you please explain what a home equity? We haven't gone over it yet. We'll get there in a minute. Guys, please be patient. We will get there. He didn't go over. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. We didn't get a Siri stop. Got to turn my phone off. All right. I'm going to move on. Was there any Maria Rodriguez and Gary? You guys got questions, so I'll wait. Maria, did you have a question? Or are you just teasing me with opening your dialogue bar and shutting it back off again? What kind of interest is offered on reverse mortgage? It's going to be slightly higher than prime, depending on the ability for the person to pay back or the amount of equity taken out. But it is going to be higher than prime. So they are receiving payments, but interest is accumulating on those payments so they can pay that interest back. Yes, when they leave the house, sell it, or whatever. That's when it's paid off. Correct. All right, good. Let's move on. Now, before I go to shared equity, someone asked about home equity loans. So let's talk about home equity loans. Home equity loans, if we don't want to wait before I talk about shared equity, let's go right to it. Home equity loans are based on the equity that a borrower has stored up in their house. However, instead of taking monthly installments like a reverse mortgage, a home equity loan is paid in one lump sum to the borrower and must be required to start repaying that loan as soon as they receive the check from the bank. Now, home equity loans are granted to those folks who have equity in their property, and they're not going to get 100% of equity. They're only going to get a percentage of equity from the bank. The money you get from a home equity loan is not counted as income because you already have ownership of this money in your house. If you're using the money, you can use it for any purpose you want. You need a new Cadillac because you got a lack of Cadillac. You need a Cadillac, get a Cadillac. Or maybe you like Lincolns. Whatever. You need a car, go get a new car. You need to take a trip around the world, go take a trip around the world. You want to throw a big party? Throw a big, huge party. Invite me. Or you just want to fix up your home. Whatever the case is, the equity stored up in your home is your money. You can use it for any reason that you desire. However, if you're using for any other reason except for home improvement, then the mortgage interest you pay on that loan is not tax deductible against income. But this is how a home equity loan works. I'm going to use a whiteboard. Hopefully this will give you an idea. I buy a home for $150,000. Over the course of, let's say, 15 years, that house appreciates in value and is now worth $450,000. When I purchased that home, I only had a $130,000 mortgage. I put $20,000 down. As I pay my mortgage off over those 15 years, this $150,000 or the $130,000 gets reduced by the mortgage payments I make. So now let's say I owe $70,000. I'm just using round numbers here. I owe $70,000 over 15 years of payments. My equity, if the house is worth $450 minus 70, equals $380,000 of equity stored up in the property. Remember, value minus debt equals equity. So the value of the house is $450. I owe $70. I have $380,000 in equity. A bank may say, based on that sort of equity, we'll advance you up to $250,000 of equity. Now I got $250,000 of cash I can use to do whatever I want. 250, that's $250,000. I'll buy a lot of lottery tickets. Whatever you want to use it for. Or that's an awful lot of pieces of bubble gum, by the way. You can use it for any reason you want. It's your money. Yet, if I use it frivolously, buying cars, having parties, going out, that's fine. I can do that. It's my money. I can do it. But what if I start to reinvest some of that into my house? Increase its value even more. Now it's worth $600,000. Well, wait a minute. Because that happened and my house value improved, so now I took $250,000 plus the 70, so I got $3.25 owed, so minus $3.25, meaning now I have an additional $280,000 in equity now stored up in the house again. But I have to pay this loan off every month with the principal and interest payment that I agreed to, but not the $380. I'm taking the $250. So $250 plus the, $250 plus the 70 is, it's $320, right? So now my equity, after I took out the home equity, is still $280,000 because I improved the value of my house. So you can see where using the money by putting it back in your house is a smart idea, but wasting it for other reasons is not. But you may want to, maybe you do need a new car, or Junior needs braces, right? Or, the older Sissy just got accepted to Harvard. Are you going to pay for that? Home equity loan. So all these reasons are valid reasons to take out the equity on the basis of what you've got stored up in equity in your house. Now, when you take that loan out, you immediately have to start paying that back at the interest rate agreed to. A home equity line of credit is like an open-ended mortgage. You can borrow up to, let's say, $250, or you don't have to. You can only, if you want, you only need $10,000, take $10,000, start repaying that back. You need 50 grand, take 50 grand, start repaying that back. But you also have the ability to borrow up to the full amount of the $250,000 line of credit. Any questions about a home equity loan? And it can be based on any property. You don't have to live in the property. Do you have to have house completely paid off or mostly paid off? For a home equity loan, no. So if reverse mortgage is monthly payments and you need to be over 65 for a home equity loan, you can be at any age and it's one lump sum payment, and the money you are used for home improvement can be taxed. Not the money, the mortgage interest on the home improvement can be used. Yes. Who determines the value of the home? Appraisers do. And it is based on market value. Yes. Phil Rizzuto, the money store. God, you're reaching back. So is the money received from the home equity loan tax? I said no, it's your money. On a home equity loan, if you have enough equity to borrow against, do you, the borrower, need to show income from work? You have to be able to qualify to pay that loan back, yes. I thought you only had to pay the interest, not the principal with the home equity. No, you have to pay the principal back too. Home equity loan is paid back with interest and don't have to live in it, correct. Would you be able to refinance both loans later on into one loan? Sure, a consolidating loan, sure, you could do that if you qualify, absolutely. Was there any other questions? Taylor, Milagros, you guys got questions? Oh, wait, or no? When paying the loan back, is it paying a separate loan or do they tie it back into, no, it's a separate loan. The principal only needs to be paid after 10 years. No, the principal and interest must be paid back. I'm sorry. Did you read something that I didn't? And if you could, can you tell me, Evie, where you got that, or Evie? How soon can an equity loan be taken if not taken during the purchase of a home? Well, it has to be anytime you own the home and have equity in it. Let me tell you, hold on, guys. I'm going to moderate here for a minute. So, in 2002, home values were at X. From 2002 through 2007, the values skyrocketed to be X, 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 X. It was unbelievable. People were realizing 30, 40, 50% increases in value year after year. So there was a Time magazine article in 2004. I'll never forget this. On the cover, it had a picture of a guy standing in the front door of his house with bags of cash in his arms. And it said, why your house is your bank. You need to own many houses or a lot of houses. And the article went on to explain, if you buy a house today, by a very short period of time, its value will appreciate dramatically, and that's called equity, and you can borrow against that. So it went on to say all these people are buying houses, building up equity, taking the money out, living the great good life. La vida loca. Yeah, baby, crazy life. And they're living it up, oh yeah, Friday night. But what happened in 2008? 2008, the markets crashed. And now it's back at minus X, less than it was in 2002. However, during this period of time, people borrowed against the equity and their average debt on the property skyrocketed. Skyrocketed because if it was worth more, they could borrow more equity, and they did. And if they sold the property, they'll pay back that loan and be free and clear of the debt, no problem. But when 2008 came around and the values tanked, they still owed a lot of money on the houses because they borrowed all that equity, and now the house is only worth this. And now they're stuck, and they have to pay these debts back along with the regular mortgage on a value of a property that tanked. And a lot of people said that's it, threw their keys to the bank and declared foreclosure. Or a lot of properties went to short sale. There's many different reasons why the mortgage crisis happened in 2008. I'm not going to sit here and take the next couple hours. It's going to take literally hours to talk about this. But what I will do is tell you this. There was actually three documentaries you may want to investigate as a source of information on this. Number one was called Panic, and it was a recent TV show or documentary. Panic, the untold story of the 2008 market crash. There was also a 2009 PBS documentary from WGBH TV in Boston called House of Cards. It wasn't the TV show on HBO. It was a documentary on how Wall Street was a house of cards and just collapsed. There was also one other documentary. It was a frontline series under American Greed called The Great Mortgage Meltdown. If you get a chance to look up any of those things, go look them up. And then it tells you what happened, the causes and the effects of the market. It talked to you about how that market built up and the perception of the investors that values of houses never fall. So we're in an ever increasingly winning market until that first call from Merrill Lynch to Shearson started causing foldings of corporate interest left and right. Calls came in on markets. Mortgage-backed securities fell flat. Derivatives based on mortgage-backed securities fell flat. And everybody called their loans and everybody lost money. But again, we're not going to go there. But understanding that understands how the mortgage market is different today than it was before 2008. You could get no doc, zero down payment loans. They were giving away money. I remember at one point, 2006, I came home from work. My wife says, "Did you apply for a mortgage?" I said, "No." She goes, "This bank just sent us a already approved credit line, signature-based $500,000 line of credit." I could walk into any bank and sign my name and get $500,000 just because they said I was able to. It was crazy. No documented income, no documented employment, zero down mortgages were being granted. Unbelievable. You don't see that anymore. But the fact is, things change. Equity is more scrutinized now on houses when people go for home equity loans. Before it was just, oh, it's obvious your house is worth much more, we'll give you the loan. Now it's, we'll send an appraiser out, and we may have an issue with certain things like unpaid association dues if you're in a homeowners association, whatever. We want that all cleared up before we even talk to you. So there's many different things about loans today that are different than they were. But home equity loans are purely based on the individual home being looked at and its equity compared to value and debt and the ability of the borrower to repay that debt. Now, I hope I disclosed and talked about home equity loans properly. Did anybody else have any other questions about a home equity loan? Not seeing any questions, and let's move on. All right, shared equity mortgages. A shared equity mortgage is literally just that. A bank makes a loan to a consumer who buys a house because they need financial assistance. But when that person sells the house, the bank shares in the profit when it's sold as a repayment. What? Yeah, I'm not advising this is a good idea, nor would I suggest it should be. But I will say this. It is a loan that you may get a question on the state exam as to what it is. Purchaser needs financial assistance to buy or renovate a property. So they go to the bank and agree to a shared equity mortgage so that when they complete the project and sell the house, the profits realized are then split between the borrower and the bank. Personally, I'd never enter into that kind of arrangement, but that exists is all you have to know. Then there's bridge or swing loans, and those are temporary financial arrangements. Bridge loans pretty much are not existent anymore. Swing loans, same term as for the bridge loan. I have actually done a few of these, not done the mortgaging, but involved in transactions where bridge loans were commonplace. And that's when I worked for one of those big yellow companies. I'm not going to say the big W name or anything, but, you know, Weichert. I'm sorry. You know, I used to work for those guys. In fact, they started there. Very good company. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But we had a relocation department, and one day, my office was in Ramsey, by the way, we got an order. A certain food company was moving to Minneapolis, and all their executives had to sell their houses and move to Minneapolis. My job was to acquire at least 2 out of the 3 leads I was given to convert them to listings with our company so we could sell the properties through their relocation department. As it turns out, I got all 3 listings. And those individuals left, and I was to sell those houses. Well, when they left, they had to move to Minneapolis and get a house, so they had to buy a house. Now they got a mortgage here in Jersey and a mortgage in Minneapolis. That's going to be tough financially to pay for. So what the company did was give them bridge loans where they said, we'll supply the money to buy your new house and to pay up the mortgage on the old one while you're in transition. And all you have to do, Mr. Corporate Executive, is pay us interest only, no principals, interest only on these loans. So it makes it very affordable for that buyer to move and very affordable to keep both houses until the first one sells. My job was to sell that first house, and when I sold it, that bridge loan then was extinguished. The proceeds go to pay off the loan and go towards the purchase of a new home, and then a conventional loan or an FHA loan, whatever they desired, took place on the other end. The bridge loan was diminished. The bridge loan was an interest-only payment and was a short-term payment only. That's the only reason you should get a interest-only loan is for a short-term payment scenario. Any questions on shared equities or bridge loans? So what is the simple definition of a bridge loan? Temporary financing, getting you from one thing to another in the least amount of cost and expense. How soon can an equity loan be taken if not taken? Oh, we talked about that. Okay. So was there any other questions? Who has come to substitute? I'm not aware of anything that's come to substitute them, Michael. I'm not aware of any product. You said they rarely use bridge loans nowadays. So what are people using? Again, I don't know, but I'm not familiar with. Maybe corporate reloads are doing their own financing. I have no idea. I'm not doing that business anymore. But if you want to know, talk to a mortgage rep. Maybe they know. Why not take a home equity loan instead of bridge loans? That's the way we structured it. That's the way the company structured it. Is bridge loan then paid off in a balloon sum after the short term? It's paid off with the proceeds of the sale of the first house. That's how it's used. Can you give an example of a bridge loan again? Okay, I can. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go through it again. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm surprised. Oh, here it is. Second paragraph under home equity loans talks about bridge loans. It's just interim financing. That's all it is, a short-term loan based on interest only to get you from one point to another. That's it. That's all you got to remember. I found that bridge loans to be expensive. They wanted too much money. Unfortunate. Sometimes that happens, but that's why not a lot of people do them anymore. Okay, was there any other questions? I do want to move on. Is a home equity loan and line of credit the same thing? Home equity loan is one lump sum given to the borrower. Home equity line of credit, as I said, is like an open-ended line of credit. You can take $10,000 now if you need it, not anymore, or you don't have to touch it, or you can borrow up to the full amount of the loan if you want. So it's like just an open loan. There's no amount you have to borrow, and there is a maximum you can borrow. But if you only need part of it, you only borrow part of it. All right, moving on, guys. Package mortgage. A package mortgage is often used when buying real and personal property items in the same purchase. Many buyers, when out looking, like to look at new construction because that's a very nice, attractive feature. It's brand new. It's new. Everything's new. Looks good. And when touring model properties, they come across a model of a finished home. And it's decorated by a designer to show off the best qualities of that property, and it looks just beautiful. And a buyer sees that and says to the seller or the builder, we'd like to buy the model unit. And we want to buy it furnished because it just looks perfect. The builder probably would do the deal, and the designer would get paid for her furniture modeling or staging that property because the buyer's buying that with the real property. So a package mortgage includes fixtures and appliances, all the personal and real property together. It's just that in a package mortgage, the buyer must fill out what's called the Bulk Sales Transfer Act paperwork, which separates the personal and real estate values into component parts so that when it comes time for taxation or anything, they have the cost of the real estate in one situation and the cost of the personal property in another, so they know the difference. That would be an example of a package mortgage. A blanket mortgage is very different. This is sometimes used by subdividers when using properties for development. Let's say I'm a builder, and on this end of this cul-de-sac, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lots on this cul-de-sac. And I borrow money to purchase all 8. So now I'm going to sell them to a builder. And each builder is going to want to buy their own lot. So I'm going to borrow money against all 8 lots. And as I sell one lot, I'm forgiven 1/8 of the debt. As I sell the second lot, then I'm forgiven for that debt. As I sold the third lot, then that part of the debt is forgiven. In other words, I'm now only exposed in my debt to the remaining lots that I still have not sold. Through what is known as a partial release clause, by selling one lot and paying the bank off for that, I've eliminated that part of the loan, so I'm given release from the obligation of that 1/8. That's if I have 8 lots. Obviously, I'm using this as an example. And there's the net lot sold. Then now I'm already half released from the debt because I've used 4 partial release clauses against the properties that are sold. And now I still only own property, or owe the bank against the 4 other properties that I own. And as I sell each one off, I'm forgiven that portion and the next one and next one until I'm completely paid off. Then all lots are paid off, all release clauses have been exercised, and I owe the bank nothing. I take my profits and I move on. That would be an example of a blanket mortgage. Any questions about a package or blanket mortgage? Can this be used for multi-home? Explain. Can which one, the package or blanket, be used for are you saying a multiple family home or multiple home purchases? I'm trying to understand your question, Evie. So the blanket mortgage, so are you asking, can I use it to purchase multiple homes? And the answer is no. Package can be used for condos if they include the personal and real property, then yes. Multifamily, I think well, that's what I'm asking. I want to make sure. For a building with 10 units, well, you're only buying one piece of property, the whole building. So I'm trying to understand what you're talking about. Is blanket mortgage is just for commercial property? No, it could be for residential. Okay. Is the blanket mortgage issue only for the purchase of land lots, not for homes already built? Correct. Is the blanket mortgage used for lots? Yes. Blanket loans are only for buying property lots? Yes. Again, yes, yes, and yes. All right. Looks like I answered. Let's move on. Wrap around mortgages. It's time to wrap. It's time to wrap. Oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. I got that in my head. Wrap around mortgage. So, I'm a busy contractor. I run 21 different projects all at once, and I'm busy, and I'm running 6 ways a Sunday. And then I have to pay my 21 mortgage bills. So every month I got to take at least a day or two off, sit down, go through my accounting slips, find out who I have to pay, how much, get my checkbook, write a check out to one guy for that amount, for that payment. Then I got to calculate on the next loan, how much do I owe on this one, take my payments, create. I'm doing this 21 times. It's going to take me forever. I might as well just hire an accountant to do all this. How about if there was a better way? How about if there was one loan I could get that I make one monthly payment to that services all 21 of those accounts? Well, heck, all I do is write one check a month, and I give it to the wraparound mortgage provider. They take that check and they service all 21 accounts at once. I'm in a heaven. Now, obviously, I'm paying the middleman for their time and expertise and effort. Therefore, there's going to be an interest charge on that amount that I have to pay as well. If you're using seller financing or wraparound mortgages or any complex financial arrangements to sell property, guys, I'm going to caution you right now. Always have an attorney write out the contract wording for the financing that takes place. If it's a conventional loan, no problem. FHA, VA, any of those, no problem. But if it's seller financing, or if it's wraparound mortgage, that can be very complex in the arrangements, have the attorneys write that stuff out. You're not an attorney and you can't do this. So you're going to need an attorney to write that all up. And then finally, an open-end mortgage. Like that home equity line of credit, an open-end mortgage is just that. You can borrow up to, let's say, $250,000 worth of money. If you need full of it, all 250, take it. But if you only need 10,000, take 10,000 and start paying that back. It's literally a source of money you can access up to a certain amount, but you don't have to take that full amount. You can only take part of it and pay that back, or an additional part of it and pay that back. But you have the ability to go all the way and take the whole amount. So an open-end mortgage is like a line of credit. It's for a full amount, but you don't necessarily need the full amount, so you take part of it. Construction loans. I've done a few of these. Construction loans, how do they work? Well, construction loans are types of temporary financing. So what happens is when I want to build a house, I'm first of all going to be probably required to buy a piece of property out of my cash reserve. So I'm going to buy a piece of property. Let's say I'm buying it for $500,000. I paid for that lot, cash money, it's mine. Now I go to a builder and I say, I need a house that's going to fit on this lot. And it's going to reflect the quality of what I have invested in the lot. 500,000 has got to be a substantial house. Therefore, I want you and my architect to get together, design a house that's going to cost me $500,000 to build, looks appropriate for this property, and fits in the neighborhood. So the builder and the architect go to visit the land and they come up with some concepts and they figure out construction costs, and they come to, we have a project that's going to cost you 500,000. It's going to be very impressive. And they show me and I say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Now I take the builder and the architect on our plans and I go down to the corner bank and I sit down with their lending officials and tell them what I want to do. First question, well, where's the property located? And I tell them, and then I already purchased it for cash money. I don't owe any money on it, and I own that property outright. Then they look at the building plans and everything else we're going to do, the costs and everything, and they say, well, if it's appropriate to the neighborhood and for that lot, then yes, we'll give you the money to build that house. But they don't give me any money. What they do is they made me sign documents getting the construction loan, and now I have to start making interest payments only to the bank without getting any money yet. Doesn't seem fair. Well, this is how a construction loan works. I start making interest payments as soon as they approve me, and then I can go out and start building. So phase one, lot clearing and foundation. I hire a guy who goes in, clears the lot, builds a foundation, stop. The bank comes to inspect, and if everything's okay, they give me enough money to pay the contractor who's worked to date, and that's it. So I tap into that construction loan for just enough money to pay the contractor to date. Now he's paid off. Then the bank says, go ahead and start. So now my second phase, my framers come in. They frame the building, side it, put some windows and doors and a roof on it, put some Tyvek or something on it to weatherproof it, stop. The bank comes in and inspects again, and if everything's okay, they give me enough money to pay off those guys to date, and that goes on and on until the last contractor gets paid and leaves. Now the house is built, and it's sitting on this beautiful lot. I have a choice whether I want to live in that house or sell it. Well, you know what? It's beautiful, but I did it for spec, so I'm going to sell that house. I'm going to ask $1.5 million. The general rule of thumb is land cost should be 1/3 of the sale price. Building cost should be 1/3 of the sales price. The final sales price would represent 150% of my initial investment. So $500,000 for the property, for $500,000 for building is $1 million. 1.5 times that is $1.5 million with a 30% profit margin. If I sell, I'll make 33% profit margin on the property. However, builders will be happy with 20 to 22% profit margins as well. So when I sell that property for $1.5 million, as soon as I get the proceeds, I pay off the construction loan of $500,000 plus any interest I owe, and I'm in singing the songs again. Hey, woo! Happy days are here again. I made a nice amount of money on my return. Or maybe I decide I want to live in that house. So as soon as I get a certificate of occupancy from the building department, I submit that to the bank, and my construction loan automatically now reverts to a conventional loan. Why conventional? Because I got 50% equity in the property through land value alone. If you look at this resale value, I'm at 65% equity portion, so they're going to be more than happy to give me a conventional loan, no PMI, and I just pay the conventional loan back over time. So a construction loan is a form of temporary financing that charges that builder, that investor, me, interest only until the project's complete. Then if I'm going to live in that property, as soon as the C of O is issued, the loan converts to conventional and I pay that back. If I sell the property, the proceeds from the sale pay off the construction loan and I take my profit and run. Before I get into sale, leaseback arrangements, or seller financing, were there any other questions about these types of loans before I move on? Is there a cons to what? to Prem. I don't understand. Can you take out a construction loan to build an addition, or is it just new house? New house. Construction loans are for new construction. Is there, I'm sorry, can you just go over the process if you decide to live in the house? If I decide to live in a house, as soon as I get the certificate of occupancy from the building department, I submit that to the bank and the loan converts to a conventional loan and I repay that. Is there any difference between an open-end mortgage and a home equity line of credit? Yes, one's a mortgage and one's a line of credit. Believe it or not. Can you roll the cost of the land with the value of the construction of the house? What do you mean roll the cost of the land in with the value of the construction of the house? That's exactly what I'm doing. 500,000 plus the cost of building 500,000. When I sell, I want to sell for optimally 1.5 million. But if I don't, then I have $500,000 of land value already paid for in cash. All I did was borrow 500,000 for the building. I've got an immediate minimum 50% value of equity in the property, so there should be no problem. So construction loan to preeminent. I guess you're saying permanent loan? That would be a conventional loan. I'm guessing, and I hate to guess. What type of loans did you come across the most as an agent? Purchase money mortgages. Do construction loans typically have higher or lower interest rates than conventional loans? Yes. Construction loans are in phases, correct? Yes. It's not just one big lump loan upfront. Yes. They're paid off as the bank approves the project. Those contractors will be paid to date, and then we move on. I feel like we're falling behind here to get done at 4. Don't worry, Alex. I am in control. Why no principal payment on construction loan? High interest rate? Because the loan isn't completely given to me until the last tradesman is paid. Then we have borrowed the full amount and now it's due back. So I'm making interest payments only for that period of time. Lot must be paid off for construction loan. Yeah, nobody's going to give you money to borrow to buy vacant land. Nobody that I know of. Construction loan, there are interest until project is complete. Yes. High interest because of higher risk. Always. Yeah. Yes, you got it, Ramey. All right, guys. Let's keep going because, again, we'd like to be out of here at a reasonable time. Now, I did read a comment earlier. Somebody said, the school says we're out at 4. How come we have to go to 4:30? I don't understand. Well, the scheduled classes are to 4:30, not 4 o'clock. That I try to get out by 4 is a target I have. But I got you until 4:30, so don't worry. If we go to 4:30, we're perfectly within our right. I don't want to do that, but I could. So don't make me mad. All right, moving on. Sale leaseback arrangements. This is a very interesting concept and one I have used. So a sale with a leaseback. What happened was a house I was buying for my wife and I was occupied by this little old lady who was going bankrupt. When the sale of the property was coming, she called me up about a month before the sale and we're going to close in January. It says, I can't close in January. We're going to have to do it more like March 1st. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, well, my daughter's preparing a place for me in Florida and it won't be ready until the end of April. I said, but we're scheduled on closing in January. Well, I want to put it off until the later April. I said, but I have a finance package that my rate expires beginning of February. And if I wait too long, my rate will go up and I don't want to do that. Well, how are we going to work around this? So the attorney said, why don't we do a sale leaseback arrangement? And I said, that's a great idea. And the lady said, what? Well, this is what happened. At the closing, she sold the property to me. I gave her the mortgage money. She gave me the deed. I own the property. But at the same moment, I gave her a lease contract to sign as a tenant so that she could stay in the property for another 2 months with an agreed upon rental rate of X amount of dollars, which covered my cost of carrying the property plus a percentage until she moved out. So at the closing, she didn't have to move. She stayed right in the house. I own the property. The grantor, she's the seller, the grantor, now becomes a tenant in a property that I own. It used to be your house, now it's my house, and now she's a tenant in the property. In other words, she sold the house to me and leased it back for a period of time. Then at the end of April, she called and said the house is ready. She moved out. I didn't charge her any additional monies, gave her a security deposit back, and then Mike Cruz went to work in the house. So understand, guys, there's ways to close transactions with the owner still remaining a tenant in the property. It's called the sale leaseback. That's one example of a sale leaseback. Another one might be where a corporation needs to raise capital for a special project. So an example, I just developed the world's most important and valuable widget. This thing will polish the paint in your car, remove the chrome on your bumpers. It cleans teeth. It de-hairs your furniture from pet hair and cures the common cold. This thing is worth $1 bajillion in the market, but I don't have any money to get the product to market. My R&D department has it, but it's still in the prototype stage. I'd like to go to manufacturing, develop it, but I don't have any money. So I approach an investor and I say, I'd like to sell you my corporate headquarter properties. The investor says, okay, how much and for what purpose? I want to sell it for X amount of dollars, and the purpose is for you to temporarily hold title to the property until I can repay you and buy it back for a profit. Would you agree? If we can agree to terms and conditions, then the investor buys my property, my corporate headquarters. I still remain as a tenant leasing that property out, but in the process, because I sold it, I raise a whole lot of cash for capital expenditures. So I create a marketing division, manufacturing, and I develop a distribution network, etc. I manufacture, distribute, market the product, and I become an instant bazillionaire in months. So I go back to my investor and say, okay, here's your price plus the guaranteed profit. I'm buying my property back from you. So a sale leaseback in a corporate realm can free up working capital until a point comes where they can buy back the property from the investor. So there's a couple different reasons how a sale and examples of how a sale leaseback arrangement works. And then there are seller arrangements. So before I finish that topic, was there any questions about what you just discussed? The sale leaseback arrangements. Oh, there is a question, so I'll hang on. Michael, did you have a question? With the little old woman, could she have become a tenant in suffrage and you'd have the problem? Yes, she could, Michael. Good observation, by the way. What if after 2 months she goes, I can't afford to pay anymore, and my daughter said I can't come and live with her anymore, so I'm just staying here. What? Now I got a problem. She's established possession of residency because she's been there a minimum 30 days. She stopped paying and I'm losing money and I can't occupy the property. I got a problem. So I'm going to have to go to court and evict her, which could take months. And now I'm in the hole and I got a problem. So yeah, Michael, that's a realistic concern of a sale leaseback. So understand when doing this, have an attorney write up the agreement so that repossession is guaranteed the buyer and the tenant must vacate according to the agreement. Good point. Ponce, Evie, you got questions? Get landlord insurance on the tenant. They will pay you rent up to 6 months. Smart idea, Evie. Very good. Robert and Ramy, you guys have questions? Or not? Oh, I don't know how to respond to that. Similar question with the widget. Could the investor then decide he doesn't want to sell the property back? No, that would be an ironclad contract you would want to have through an attorney's writing up the contract that the investor must sell at a period of time. So sale leaseback, almost like selling the property to get cash flow. So complete my business, then buy it back. Yes. All right. Let's move on. Oh, actually, it's 2:30. It's time for our afternoon coffee break. So for until 3 o'clock, we're on break. Do what you need to do. Smoke them if you got them. I don't care what you do. You can burn for all I care. But at the end of the day, we got to be back here at 3 o'clock to finish up. So I'll see you guys at 3, and I'll leave the conversation open. You can chit chat. But again, we'll start up at 3 and finish up the day. See you then. Okay, 3 o'clock, time to begin again. So moderating and moving on. Seller financing arrangements. There are several ways to finance property through seller financing. One of them is where the seller gives a note and a mortgage to the buyer to buy the property. Another one may be through what is known as a installment sale, also known as a land contract. A very specific type of seller financing where the buyer makes monthly or periodic installment payments to the seller, the owner, and upon completion of the installment payment, receives the deed for the property. The whole time that they're making the installment payments, the deed is kept in a trust by the seller. So if the buyer defaults on his payment, the owner, all they have to do is evict the tenant from the property through non-payment. They already gained possession of the property because they kept the deed in trust. But if the buyer completes all installment payments, then they own the property because the deed is delivered to them on the final installment payment. There are lease to own options, lease purchase options, sale leasebacks, all kinds of arrangements that can be had. All right, now moving on to the primary mortgage markets. Where do you go to borrow money to buy a house? Well, there's many different places. Traditionally, people went to banks, savings and loans, commercial banks, mutual savings banks, mortgage banks. Well, yes, those are all valuable sources. There's also life insurance companies that issue mortgage monies to policy holders. Credit unions, if you're a member of a union, one of the best places you need to go to get a mortgage is through your credit union, which will give you much better lending terms than a corner bank will. So there's many different places for getting money to buy houses. Now, when someone does find a lender, they would have to apply for the mortgage. So there's a process of credit approval. Number one, you have to submit documentation to the lending source for a mortgage application. That usually requires no less than 2-year bank statements, 2 years of bank returns, current pay stubs, authorization to check your credit, all kinds of documentation they want to see to prove that you're viable or you're willing and able to pay back the loan. Once you apply for credit, the application goes to what is known as an underwriter department. That's the risk analysis division of the bank. They're going to review your criteria, your credentials, your credit history, your credit scores, your income, your tax. They're going to examine everything about you and make a decision whether they should lend you money or not and under what conditions. So they carefully investigate your applicant information and decide whether to grant you a loan. And once they determine whether you're creditworthy or not, we'll give you a decision. I'm sorry, you don't meet our credit criteria, loan denied. And we'll talk about what happens next on that case. Or, congratulations, you have been pre-approved for your loan, which means you're ready now to go buy a house. As a seller of houses and a representative of seller of houses, if a buyer were to approach me and say, hey, I'd like to buy your house, I'd ask them, have you been pre-approved with a loan application yet? And they'll say, no, but I am pre-qualified through an online lender. I'm ready to buy your house. And I'd say, sorry, that means nothing to me. But I've been pre-approved, pre-qualified with this lender. Based on what criteria? Well, they asked me 2 questions over the internet. I answered them, and I can buy a $500,000 house. Really? Huh. Well, until you have a full-blown mortgage application, Mr. Buyer, you are not a viable buyer of my house. In fact, I wouldn't even call you a buyer until you are approved with a pre-approval from a mortgage lender. So here's a valuable lesson, guys. When representing buyers, get them to the mortgage guy to get a pre-approval for a mortgage. You don't want to deal with buyers who have pre-qualification letters from online lenders because they ask 2 questions. Do you have a job and how much money you make? That is no way qualifying you to buy a house. It just says based on those 2 answers, it seems that you may be able to apply and maybe get a house. So a seller doesn't want to hear about maybe, maybe, maybe. They want to see I'm pre-approved to go, ready to go. All I have to do is sign a contract and I can buy a house. That's who they want to see come across their door. So pre-approvals are very important in getting people ready to buy houses. Sometimes they use credit scores as a platform for making a decision, but really that is an add-on to help them qualify you as a buyer. So do you know your credit scores? You have 3 of them. There's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. You're entitled to receive a free credit report from every 3 of them every once a year. I use Discover as a business expense card, or the credit card. Discover gives me my monthly scores every time they send me a bill. So I can access those scores at any time I want, find out where my credit score is to help me keep on top of my credit, make sure it's always the best it can be. But standardized credit scores, FICO scores, Fair, Isaacs, and Companies, that's what FICO means, reports 3 different credit scores, and they use the middle score as your credit score. Now, that will work against you if you have 2 low scores and 1 high score, because they don't average them, they just take the middle score, and if it's low, it's low. But if you have 2 high and 1 low, then it benefits you because you're going to use the middle score, which is much higher. So credit score is very, very, very important to people looking to buy houses. Even so important today that some employers will hire you or not based on your credit score. And I'm not speaking out of school. This is true. So your credit score, your credit history is very important. It's your ticket to financial freedom. In lieu of the fact that a buyer has done an application and we don't know what credit scores is, or if they are actually ready and willing and able to buy a house, I may have to sit with them to run qualifying ratios. Meaning I'm going to ask them what their total monthly income is, what their total expenses are, less any housing costs, to determine their qualifying ratios. Well, what's that? A qualifying ratio is used to determine if you can afford to buy a house. Typically, a ratio might be 28 or 36. The borrower is allowed to spend up to 28% of gross monthly income for housing expense, or up to 36% of income, including other payments on long-term debt. With certain mortgage payments, a ratio of up to 43% is sometimes allowed. So running the income and expense can give me your qualifying ratios to see if you fit into a scenario where you could probably get a mortgage or not. So banks sometimes would run that in lieu of a full-blown credit application. If not, then they're going to have to do a full-blown application to determine. Okay, let's move on. Government sources or influence in mortgage lending. The first government influence is called the Federal Reserve System. However, Federal Reserve, some people know as the central bank, right? It's the Fed's banking system. Well, in fact, it's not even part of our government structure. What? The Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's run by families with names like Rothschild, DuPont, and other things like that. They're a very influential, very strong, highly profitable bank. They literally set economic policy in many countries worldwide. In fact, the Fed is so strong that when they speak, Wall Street knee-jerk reacts. So if a Federal Reserve spokesman gets up and says, we're just thinking that maybe we're going to raise rates, within minutes, Wall Street crashes 300 points. Literally, that's how heavy the words of the Fed are. The Fed comes out and says, we're thinking of lowering rates. The Fed raises by 300 points in a day. Crazy, crazy cause and effect here. But the Federal Reserve economic policies influence worldwide governments and are a prime source of economic policy here in the United States. But, excuse me, but, as we say in our manly voice, but there's also many other things that contribute to govern policy. So secondary mortgage markets are as what I'm going to try to illustrate on the board here. Let's take an example. Your corner bank makes $10 million of loans in the previous year. They know that by making those $10 million loans, if they held those loans to maturity and full payout, they're going to get a return of about $25 million, and their shareholders are going to be happy. That's if they hold the debt for a long period of time. But what typically happens, and this is the secondary market, an investor stops in and says, hey, what kind of loans you got? Oh, yeah, I'm interested in buying your loans. And I tell you what, you lent out $10 million and you're expecting a $15 million profit in 30 years. How about if I buy them today for $15 million? In other words, instead of waiting 30 years to get 15, you can get an immediate 50% return on your debt owed today. And this could be literally days, if not months, after they make the total package of loans. So the bank sells to the guy with the 15 million. They now have 15 million. Now they have 15 million to go out and lend again. So they're going to increase their loan portfolios, make more money, service more clients. This investor plans on holding the debt until it matures and make $10 million in profit. However, another investor comes along and says, we'll give you a 20% return on your investment right now. We'll pay you 18 million for 15. They sell it to them. Now this guy's got 18 million to go out and hunt out any other banks that have loans to buy them. This guy who has it for 18 million, he's going to hold it until it reaches maturity at 25. However, another guy comes in and it goes on 1, 2, 3, 4, could be 5 or 6 times. Each time that loan is sold, someone's making money. That's a very simplistic overview of the secondary mortgage markets where loans are bought and sold all the time. Your loan that you use to purchase your house typically is sold within months after it's made to another bank who then holds it. Their loan didn't change, the payment didn't change, the amount owing didn't change. It's just who's servicing the account that changed. Your loan was sold. And then a year or two later, you find out it was sold again. You can't control that. They're buying the note. Remember I told you the note was a financial instrument that can be bought and sold in the open markets, and here it is in the secondary markets. People are buying notes and selling them all the time. Who buys these? Investors who want to make money. Money market managers flush with cash, venture capitalists flush with cash, buy debt and make money over the long-term payouts, or sell that debt again to another investor and make a short-term required or return around investment profit. Either way, they're making money, guys. The government of the United States likes that, so they got involved. In fact, there's 3 players in the secondary mortgage markets that you have to be aware of. You might get a test question. They are Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae, and Freddie Mac. Was there any questions as I'm speaking? I see a couple people have questions. No, Tim's not burning. So secondary market buys loans from banks. Yes. Or investors buy loans from secondary markets. That's also a correct statement. Yes, both of them happen. Is it true that what happens to my loan then? Is that true? And what happens to my loan? Then you just keep paying your loan to whoever the servicer is. It didn't change. The amount didn't change. Your payment didn't change. It's just who you make the check out to that changes. Someone told me the transfers sometimes are not done correct, which makes the loan unsolvable. That's possible. If it continues to be sold, does the change the spot on priority list? No. It's still recorded as the primary purchase money mortgage and is paid off first, no matter who the servicer is. Does that violate your privacy? They're giving all your info to. Nope. Does banking regulations state that debts can be bought and sold on the secondary markets any time, without regard to your private information. They're just buying the debt from a bank. They don't really know who you are or care about you. They're just buying the debt. So the value is getting people sign on to loans because they are always resellable. Yes, Gary, that's one of the principles why banks make loans, because they know that somebody's going to want to buy them for an investment. That means they can turn around that amount of debt that they now incurred and turn it into a profit, turn around and make out more loans, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. I feel this would be a good trap for possible fraud scammers. So, good, debt. What else do we need to know about Federal Reserve System? Nothing more than that. With the loans being sold in the secondary mortgage markets, does that affect the homeowner's interest rates? No. When you say they're buying the debt, you mean they're buying the debt to reap the return on the interest or to sell it again themselves. Both, Michael. They're doing both. If they can be a purchaser on the debt early enough in the game, they're going to then probably turn around and sell them again and make a quick profit. Or they could plan on holding that debt for a long term, but then usually somebody comes along and tries to buy it out again. So either or, and both are probable. All right, so let's move on. So let's talk about Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae, and Freddie Mac. There are three government influences in the secondary mortgage market. They are the Federal National Mortgage Association, known as Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is the leading buyer and seller of mortgages in the secondary mortgage markets. No one does more business than Fannie Mae. So what Fannie Mae does is they sell bonds to investors. When they sell bonds to investors, they raise money to purchase mortgages from banks, etc. They buy FHA, primarily FHA style mortgages. Any type of FHA mortgage they buy. And when they do, it frees up lending capital for the bank. And now the FHA controls that debt. And as income is received on those payments, whatever profits are realized are passed through to when those bonds mature, investors make money. So Fannie Mae is an investor in the secondary mortgage market that raises money through selling bonds and buys primarily FHA style loans. They are the largest buyer and seller of mortgages on the secondary mortgage markets, bar none. Then there's Ginnie Mae, the Government National Mortgage Association. Ginnie Mae sells pass-through certificates to investors and then use the money to buy low, moderate, and high-risk mortgages, low income, moderate income, and high-risk mortgages. Subprime lenders, they're targeting the high-risk loans. Low income, moderate income loans, they're buying those too. So as Ginnie Mae makes money, they pay off through a pass-through to the certificate holder as profit, kind of like a dividend. Ginnie Mae, again, buys low and moderate income and high-risk mortgages. Fannie Mae buys FHA loans. And then there's the third one, the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, or Freddie Mac. Freddie also sells bonds to investors to raise money to buy, typically, conventional loans. Very conforming, very low risk, very safe investments. So again, Fannie and Freddie sell bonds. Ginnie sells pass-through certificates. Fannie buys FHA mortgages. Ginnie buys low-income, moderate-income, and high-risk loans. And Freddie buys conventional loans. So those are your three partakers in the secondary mortgage markets. Did anybody not understand these three? And please read these guys to understand exactly what it is they do. There is a question, so I'll wait. Or two or three, so let's see. Okay, thank you, Gary. Anybody else with a question? Again, this is all you got to know about this stuff to pass an exam. Other than that, doesn't matter what they do, who they are, or anything else. What does Ginnie Mae sell? They sell pass-through certificates as investment vehicles, meaning a pass-through certificate will generate an income which is treated like a dividend, a cash payment, a pass-through of profits, if you will. All right, moving on. Good. Now, there's something called non-conforming loans. Loans that don't meet uniform underwriting standards. What do you mean? Well, I want to buy a golf course and I'm selling an airport and throwing in a car dealership with that. So fix the financing for me. That's very weird. That's very strange. How are we going to structure the financing? Non-conforming loans where normal underwriting policies are thrown out. So specific types of portfolio lenders can be very flexible in their guidelines. Non-conforming loans could be jumbo loans. Jumbo loans meaning a very large amount of money. When I started doing business in the 90s, a jumbo loan was anything over $400,000. Today, a jumbo loan starts at around $750,000 and goes up. Quite a big change since I started doing real estate. Borrowers with unusual credit situations are then probably subject to a non-conforming loan where certain portfolio lenders will look at it and maybe float the loan because of the very unique situation. Or unique houses where you can't compare them to anything else and you can't judge them on income. Well, a unique type of home that can't be analyzed may be subject to a non-conforming loan. So many different scenarios may present themselves where non-conforming loans are required. Now, moving into the closing part of our discussion, before I do, apparently there's some questions, so let me open it up real quick. When COVID over most loans will be non-conforming loans due to breaks in work and life turned upside down. Most regular. I'm not fully understanding the equation, but I'm guessing what you mean when this whole mess with COVID's over, because of work history problems and income problems, will non-conforming loans be the standard? I can't say that. I don't know. I hate to call out crystal ball predictions or prognostications. I just don't know, Gary. There's just no way for me to predict that. I don't understand what a pass-through certificate is. Anyway, to break it down to simple terms, like a stock, if you will. So you own a stock in a company. As the company makes money, they send you a dividend payment based on your investment. You can either reinvest that or take it as profit. A pass-through certificate is for a certain amount of money with generated income based on the amount generated. Therefore, if the company makes profit, they will pass through to me a payment of profit. But again, it's outside of the purview of needing to know for an exam. But if you want to look it up, you can always look it up and study it. But again, it's not really important, Kira, to understanding what you need to know for the test. Just know that that Ginnie sells pass-through certificates. That's all you got to remember. Excuse me. So financing legislation is where we're at now. Laws that govern lenders. First of all, there's the Truth in Lending Act, also known as Regulation Z. The Truth in Lending Act and the Truth in Advertising Act are both together under Regulation Z. Where you may have heard a commercial like, buy this Nissan, $99 a month. Well, how do you qualify for that? In order to understand that, they have to give you a full disclosure of all the parameters you have to meet to get the $99 a month payment. And most likely you can't meet them. So most likely you're not going to get a payment of $99 a month. But so long as, when using a trigger term, $99 a month, so long as they back it up with all the requirements that you must meet to get that, then it's okay to advertise. So therefore, when using any trigger terms, a payment amount, a length of loan, down payment, points, whatever you're using as a number to infer to a client that they will get, you have to back it up with all the qualifying criteria as to how they can get that. That's the Truth in Lending Act, so that consumers know exactly what it's going to cost them before they sign on the dotted line. Then there's the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which says everyone is entitled to equal credit treatment, and it cannot be discriminatory. The only thing that you can be denied credit for is the inability to meet the requirements to pay back the debt. Wow. So if I want to borrow money, I have to apply for the loan. If I'm denied under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and the, what's the other one? The Credit Reporting Act. If I'm denied, that creditor must give me a written statement as to why I was denied and a copy of my credit report so I can look at it and understand why I was denied, and then I can fight the credit companies. And then there's the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which was the federal government's guideline on how to close residential real estate transactions. It is a federal guideline, meaning nationwide we use the same process. Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and we used that all the way up until October 2015. Then everything changed. Excuse me. What happened was in 2015, in October 2015, no longer could you just show up at a closing and find out what your costs were going to be, and that's what happened most of the time under RESPA. That people were told, show up at the closing, bring your checkbooks, because we never know how much this final settlements are going to be, which left the atmosphere ripe for things like kickbacks. And that was quite common at the closing table for realtors to be approached by attorneys and said, hey, we need some of your commission money to make this deal happen. If you don't pay, there's no deal. And they'd say it right in front of your client. So what are you going to do? Tell your client, sorry, you can't close because I'm too greedy for my paycheck? Or are you going to put back some money into the deal? So most realtors put money back in a deal. I learned a very long time ago that this was not right, and was given by an attorney friend of mine some dialogue to use. And that was under the RESPA settlement procedure, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act of old. What we do is we show up at closing and the attorneys would hit us for money to make the deal happen. Normally I'd let the other realtor respond, okay, I'll give you the $2,000. And then they turn and say, okay, Tim, what about you? And I'll say, just a question before I agree. What's that? Mr. Attorney, if you knew that kickbacks were illegal, would you ask me to contribute $2,000 again to the closing costs? All of a sudden, that attorney just found out that I know he's asking for a kickback. And if he were to ask me again for that $2,000, he'd be committing a infraction of the law, because kickbacks are illegal under law. And if found out he's got criminal charges, then the Bar Association may be approaching him for unethical business practices, and his license may be at jeopardy. So guess what? They never ask me again to contribute at closing, because they know I know that the game they're playing is a kickback, and it's illegal according to the IRS. So nowadays, after October 2015, we have what's called TRID, T-R-I-D. Instead of RESPA, we have TRID. TRID stands for TILA, Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, full disclosure. R for Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, meaning there's a federal guideline and paperwork we have to convey. ID was the integrated disclosure paperwork that's now new and given to buyer and seller before the closing even happens. So they can review the costs and understand what all those things are 3 days before the closing occurs. That way, no kickbacks can happen, no weird account transfers of monies occur. Everything's given to the buyer and seller 3 days before the closing. So under Regulation Z, it requires credit institutions to inform consumers of the true cost of obtaining credit. You must give them all the parameters, all the disclosure of what you're actually paying for, how much you're paying, the total amount of payments, everything you're paying back. So it allows the consumer to compare costs of various lenders and avoid the uninformed use of credit. It only applies to residential loans, not for residential purchase loans, not for business or commercial loans. It's only for residential real estate transactions. So under the Truth in Lending Act, the annual percentage rate must be disclosed to the borrower so that they understand the true cost of borrowing money. The APR is widely misunderstood. Most people think, oh, that's the rate I pay. Well, on a closing document, when you close your mortgage with a mortgage company, there's actually 2 APRs listed on the cover of the mortgage document. One is the annual percentage rate based on what you're borrowing and the amount of interest charged. The other one is called the actual percentage rate, or because many borrowers sometimes finance closing costs, that actual interest rate varies a little bit. So they're going to put the annual and the actual percentage rate on your documents. A creditor is anybody who extends credit for more than 25 times a year or more than 5 times if a dwelling is used as a security on the loan. Under the Truth in Lending Act, all consumer loans have a 3-day right of rescission. So I recently bought a new car. It was a Nissan. And as I'm sitting in the dealership, the finance guy goes, if you'd like, we can have an insurance, you can get your insurance card down to us and we'll have the car ready for you to drive home tonight if you buy it. So he's doing all his paperwork and I'm ready to sign. He goes, so you're going to drive your car home tonight? I go, I'm going to sign the document, but remember, I have 3-day right of rescission to determine whether I want to go through with the financing or not. So I'm going to have to go home and compare this note to whatever I can get on finance from my own to see if it's a better deal. He looks at me and goes, what can I do to have you drive the car home tonight? I said, how much more of a discount or extra can you give me? Now, whether you know this or not, I've always known it because I have some very close friends. And in fact, my next door neighbor is in the car business. He makes a lot of money selling used cars. God help us. But anyway, he looks at me and says, if you agree to take the car tonight, I'll give you the wheel-to-wheel 5-year extended warranty on the car. Now you're talking. Sign, here's my proof of insurance. I drove the car home that night, getting a bonus and the fact that it was the end of the month. And because it's the end of the month, dealer has to get that car off the lot so he doesn't pay any dealer financing this month, which costs him money out of his pocket and cuts into his profit. So knowing that, I can come from a stronger area of negotiation. So the thing is, all consumer loans have a 3-day right of rescission, except for purchase money mortgages to buy residential properties. In other words, you're buying your house and you close on the deal and you move in. And then 3 days later, you say, you know what? I don't like that financing package. You can't deny that loan. You already took it and bought the house. You're not going to get out of that loan. But for any and all other consumer loans, secondary mortgages, home equity loans, consumer loans, car loans, whatever, you have a 3-day right of rescission after signing to consult your attorney to determine, is this the best deal? And if not, you can get out of that deal within 3 days and get your money back. Never use triggering terms in your advertising that require full disclosure of all the learned terms, because that costs money to advertise all that information in a written statement. So instead, it's advised that you use terms like, easy financing available. Financing available for well-qualified buyers. Words like that are nebulous and don't mark or nail down a specific payment. But if I use terms like buy this car for $99 a month, then I have to disclose, because $99 a month is a trigger term. So you have to make sure that if you use trigger terms, disclose. If you don't, then you don't have to disclose terms and conditions. Under Truth in Lending Act, if you're found guilty of violating the law, you can fine $10,000 per day, so long if the violation continues, plus the court's cost, attorney fees, and actual damages. If you willfully violate the law, you mean you do it in a really nasty, obtuse manner where everybody just, is drawn to you because of this. Well, it's called a misdemeanor. You go to jail or have a fine of $5,000 and/or 1 year's imprisonment, or both. Real serious, guys. These guys don't mess around. We talked about the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. You can't. Oh boy, I'm losing my words. You can't discriminate in lending based on race and color, religion, national origin, sex, dependence on public system, age, marital status, but age. You can't. Can you deny it? Credit because of age? Well, I'm going to say I can't confirm nor can I deny that age is a protected class. I know it's not protected under the federal fair housing laws or the New Jersey laws against discrimination. But according to this PowerPoint, age is a protected class for credit. I'm assuming that they know better than me. I don't want to go there. But all these criteria can never be discriminated against when it comes to lending. So again, I know I'm going quickly. We have a lot of ground to cover. What questions might you have? What is the legality? I'm sorry, TRID stands for T for Truth in Lending Act, R for Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, ID Integrated Disclosure. What is the legality of paying clients for referrals? Ooh, not going to go there. Not going to go there. That's outside of our purview. That's a licensing law matter that's discussed in day 1 and day 2 of our licensing class, so I don't want to touch that topic at this point. Moving on. Anybody else with a question? What page is the TRID? Well, that would be the bottom of page 261. After Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, it says TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure. That's the TRID. I apologize if this comes from confusion. If a purchase money mortgage was defined as any loan used to buy real estate, and right of rescission applies to all loans, why it doesn't apply to purchase? Because you can't decline the mortgage after you bought a house. That's why. If RESPA changed in 2015, does it still come up a lot? I'm going to go through it in just a minute. In fact, we're going to talk about it right now, unless there's any other questions, so I'll wait. But you said you have 3 days to return the car. That's a consumer loan of a car. I'm not returning a car. I'm just not taking possession of it for 3 days. So understand the difference of taking possession versus signing a loan application. That's all. All right, guys, okay. If you got questions, I'll wait. I don't want to rush. I don't want to confuse anybody. Okay, that's good, Arson. Now you got it. Good. Yes, right, Gary. Exactly. All right, not seeing any other questions. Let me continue. Oh, there is another question. So, Sherry, what's your question? Oh, I'm sorry. Now there's no question. Oh, there is. Okay. Or now there's not. Do you have a question? Does 3 days rescission cover refis? Yes, it does. Okay, moving on. Now, The Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act is the federal process, and it governs all 50 states on how to close real estate transactions. RESPA involves any new or first mortgage financing, and the buyer must have full knowledge of all settlement costs. Under TRID, the Truth in Lending Act, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, Integrated Disclosure, TRID, merges forms from RESPA and the new closing procedures. The lender is responsible for delivering a final loan estimate to the buyer 7 days before the closing, so that the buyer can review the final loan estimate to determine if the program's right, the payments are correct, the amount of money being borrowed, the interest rate are all jiving with what they're told. And if they are, the borrower then sends back to the lender an intent to proceed letter. The letter tells the bank, we're ready to close. And if not already furnished at that point, the borrower must provide the lender the aliens information. No, that's not about Martians or little green men. A stands for the address of the property, L for the loan amount requested, I for income, E for estimated property value, N for names, and S for social security numbers. That's on top of page 262 in your textbook. So when sending back the intent to proceed letter, they also must furnish, if not already, the aliens information to the bank. That final loan estimate delivered 7 days before closing must disclose all the costs that the consumer is using. And if everything is correct, then they go to a closing 3 days after the lender sends the integrated disclosure to buyer and seller. So 7 days before the closing, the lender sends the buyer the final loan estimate. The buyer sends back the intent to proceed letter furnishing the aliens information. And then 3 days before closing, the lender gives each the buyer and seller a copy of the integrated disclosure sheet showing all the settlement costs that are going to take place. And then 3 business days later, the closing occurs. So by doing this, it prohibits all kinds of kickbacks from occurring. And in fact, Article 8 of the TRID disclosures specifically prohibit kickbacks in its wording. So TRID is merged forms from RESPA and TRID. Lenders responsible to deliver the documents to the buyer and seller, and lenders are liable if costs exceed a tolerance limitation imposed by TRID. So if final closing documents are different than the actual cost, the lender may be responsible for the cost of those extras, or new documents of disclosure have to be drawn up, and then a 3-day postponement in the closing must occur. Remember, 3 business days have to transpire. So it's up to the lender to make sure that all the paperwork and disclosures are done correctly in the right time frame. Now, when 2015 rolled around in October, closings got fakakta like you won't believe. Everything got messed up. Nobody knew of the proper procedure. It took about 5 to 6 months before things started to run smoothly. Today, if you bought real estate recently in the last 5 years, the TRID documentation is very clear, very explicit. Then, after the final integrated disclosure is dispersed between buyer and seller, 3 days later, you go to a closing, and no new surprises occur. And if there are, either the lender is responsible for an excess fee, or if it's a small fee, that would be allowed to be settled at closing. All right. TRID rules do not apply to home equity lines of credit, to mortgages secured by a movable dwelling, mobile homes, reverse mortgages, cash transactions, and commercial loans. They do not apply to those. There are still some paperwork from RESPA that you can use for HELOCs and reverse mortgages, including the HUN one, the GFE, and the TIL disclosures can be used. And the final loan estimate, the lender must provide within 3 business days of completing the loan application originally, for the original loan estimate, excuse me, and then 7 days before the closing for the final loan estimate. Business days are 3 business days before a closing, but are not including Sundays and holidays. So 3 business days, Monday through Friday, is any day a lender of a business is open. So Saturdays could be included in that. All right, and now we've reached the end finally of the chapter. So I'm going to pull up the review questions. It's going to be a little after 4 when we get out of here, but I think we got there. Does anybody have any final questions to follow up before we pull up the questions for review? RESPA, if you sell a property only to learn after the state will withhold big money on escrow, who is at fault? Gap in procedures, help, who's responsible? Wow. I would say the lender's responsible for that, in my opinion, but again, I don't know the exact circumstances. Is the time for a loan, the LE, loan estimate and CS intended to intentionally slow down the closing process to prevent kickbacks? No, it's done that way so that people, when they get to closing, don't have any surprises, and kickbacks are not a concern. Does wholesaler fees need to be included here? Yes. Okay, thanks. Anybody else with a question? Kira, Byron, or Brian, sorry. Okay, well, good. Let's go to the Q&A and let's finish up the day. Let's see, we're in chapter 15. So where's my 15? There it is. All right, here we go. Number 1, the term purchase money mortgage applies to what? Purchase money mortgage applies and again, from those who did respond, first of all, thanks for responding, guys. For those who did respond, 87% of you got it correct. A, 20 mortgage used to finance the purchase of real estate. Purchase money mortgage, you're purchasing real estate. Number 2, an elderly widow is on Social Security and a fixed income. She wants to stay in her long-time home, which now has a market value of more than $200,000, but can't afford rising property taxes, and the house needs a new roof. This person is a perfect candidate for a what? Excuse me. And 86% of you are correct, answering B, a reverse mortgage. Yes. Number 3, real estate brokers should be particularly careful to seek an attorney's assistance when a real estate transaction involves, what did I say? And from those who did respond, about 2/3 of us, 64%, got it right. D, wrapped around mortgages. Yes, D for dog. Or the other one was seller financing, but that wasn't an option. Number 4, the buyer does not immediately receive a deed when purchasing with a. If you recall, I said it was a very special kind of seller financing. And majority of you are getting it wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, only 20% of you got it correct. It is D, a land contract. That is a very specific type of seller financing mortgage. Seller financing mortgage can take on one of 3 or 4 different ways, but a land contract is a very specific way to seller finance, and D for dog is correct. Number 5, what is the function of a mortgage broker? Now, I didn't go over it in class, but that's a source of money. And what is the purpose of a mortgage broker? What do they do? Oh, excuse me. And 63% of respondents, 2 out of 3, just about got it right. B, bring borrowers and lenders together. That's what the brokerage business is about. Real estate brokers bring buyers and sellers together. Mortgage brokers bring borrowers and lenders together. B for boy. Number 6. When a bank allows a buyer to spend up to 28% of gross income on housing costs, it's applying a formula known as when a bank allows a buyer to spend up to 28% of gross income on housing costs, it is applying a formula known as qualifying ratios. 70% of you got that. While we were doing that, I entered in my email address, the site for the homework, rvcareercenter.com/homework, and the link, once again, to give us a review, rvcareercenter.com/review us. We really would like to see your reviews, guys. It does mean a lot to us to understand what we're doing. So, number 7, then, a couple purchased a residence for $375,000. They made a down payment of $45,000 and agreed to assume the seller's existing mortgage, which is a current balance of $123,000. The couple financed the remaining $207,000 of the purchase price by giving a mortgage and note to the seller. This type of loan, by which the seller becomes a mortgagee, is called a And from those responding, about 54% of you are correct, answering D, a purchase money mortgage. Remember, I said any loan that's used to buy a house is called a purchase money mortgage. This just happens to be a very convoluted seller financing and mixed financing arrangement, but it's still used to purchase a house. D for dog is correct. It's a purchase money mortgage. Number 8, a developer obtains one mortgage for a whole subdivision. As he sells each lot, he obtains a release from one parcel from the what mortgage? Very good. 73% of us correctly answered D, a blanket mortgage. Very good. Blanket mortgage. Number 9, an investor buys a local factory from a company that intends to remain and rent the building from him. The investor has put together a what? Awesome. 91% of you guys got this one correct. It's a B, sale leaseback. Yes, very good. You guys are nailing these questions, by the way. Very good. Number 10, which of the following best defines the secondary market? And 84% of you correctly answered B for boy, lenders who buy and sell mortgages after they've been originated. Correct. Good for you. 11, what is Fannie Mae? Really? Three people actually answered D, an old woman who lives in a cave. Really? Fannie Mae, and 87% of you correctly answered A, the leading purchaser of mortgages on the secondary mortgage markets. Correct. An old woman who lives in a cave. Good Lord. Number 12, the public can invest in mortgage pools by buying certificates issued by who? Who issues certificates? And Ginnie Mae issues certificates. C, Government National Mortgage Association. Correct. 74% of you got that correct. 13, which of the following is not a participant in the nation's secondary mortgage market? Outstanding. Another 75% of you got this one correct. It's A, the FMHA, the Farmers Home Loan Association. A. Now it's called the Rural Economic Community Development Program. Number 14, which of the following represents the purpose of Freddie Mac? Oh, that's Fannie, Ginnie, Freddie. Which one was Freddie? What do they do? 85% of you got it right. B for boy, buys and pools blocks of conventional mortgages, selling bonds with such mortgages as securities. Number 15, Regulation Z protects the consumer from 50% of you correctly answered A, misleading advertising. Yes, A. 16, Regulation Z provides that and from those who did respond, 58% are correct, answering C. If certain financial terms are mentioned, others must also be included. Trigger terms, full explanation, C. Number 17, which of the following is a triggering term that mandates inclusion of full details in an ad or an advertisement? Oh, excuse me. Which of the following is a triggering term that mandates inclusion of full details in an ad? And 52% of those who responded are correct, answering B, less than 10% down. If you're assuming a 4% down, that already exists, so what you have to do is qualify for it. Owner may finance in affordable terms are nebulous terms and don't trigger the requirement for full disclosure. Only B does. Number 18, if a triggering term is included in an ad, must go on to explain 92% of you correctly answered D, all of the above. Yes, you have to disclose all that stuff. Number 19, under Regulation Z, the borrower who places a mortgage Now, don't be confused. I'm going to say why you shouldn't be confused is because what if the loan, the mortgage, is a purchase money mortgage? Then A can't hold to be true. The answer is D. 38% of you had D answered correctly. Must be quoted the APR as well as the simple interest rate, the annual percentage rate, and the actual percentage rate. Number 20, at what point is the lender required to provide a loan estimate to their prospective borrowers? And 83% of you got it correct. C, within 3 business days of completing the loan application. That is correct, C. Number 21, last couple questions and we're done for the day, guys. A few changes were made to the original loan estimate. Which of the following is one that will trigger the need for a new loan estimate and a delay in closing? And about 53% of you are correct answering B, the loan product was changed. Well, if the loan product would change, then all the numbers are screwed up on the closing documents and have to be all changed. So B for boy would be correct. And then the last question, the borrowers want to talk with several lenders about various loan products before making a final decision. At this point, how much money may each lender require from the buyer borrowers? And unfortunately, the correct answer, of which only about 1/4 of you got correct, actually about 21% of you got correct, was C, enough for a credit report, not repair, report. Sorry about the typo, but C would be the answer. Just enough to apply for the credit application. All right, guys, good job today. You got good results. It seemed to have good retention on the information. For tonight, chapters 14, 15 for homework. You can find them at recareercenter.com/homework. Tomorrow, chapters 16, 17, and 18 in one day. It's going to be a busy day. A lot to cover. The first chapter 16 is going to take all morning long. 17 and 18 are not that bad. So again, thanks for your participation today. Conversation is now open if you want follow-up questions or any other questions about real estate you want me to discuss with you. I know it was tough. There was a lot of difficult concepts and things to discuss, so it's always recommended to pre-read and then reread if you can. What does loan product mean? The loan that you're applying for. You want an adjustable rate versus a fixed rate versus a conventional FHA, VA, mixed rates, whatever it is. Okay, guys, thanks for participation. Give me a review if you could at recareercenter.com/review us. I would really appreciate it. Other than that, you're free to go. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. For anybody else who wants to stick around, please feel free. Is wholesaling a good market? I don't want to answer that question, Awa. I can't. I'm not a wholesaler. Tough to make a buck in. I'm not going to go further than that. Since the right of rescission doesn't apply to any purchase money mortgage, is there any type of mortgage that it does apply to? All other mortgages except a purchase money mortgage. In other words, you can apply for any type of loan whatsoever except for purchase money mortgage. They are all given the right of 3-day rescission except for the purchase money mortgage. Answer to question 14. Let's see, 14 was B for boy. Was there 14B for boy, B? Okay, can you please review 19 from review? 19. Under regulations, the borrower who places a mortgage, D, must be quoted the APR as well as a simple interest rate. Is there any other questions? Okay, great, guys. Thanks, appreciate it. Have a great evening. There's something I'm going to email you personally. Okay.